think that's it. Good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome for joining us today. My name is Michelle de Klerk, and I'm the founder of the Women's Chapter. And today we are being joined by Valerie Genty, who's the founder of Ethos of London. She's one of our members. And this event is part of a series of events called the WomenLed Wonder Series, where we get to talk to our members and really get under the skin of their brands and their business journeys and understand what makes their businesses so very special. And Valerie has an incredibly special business because her platform is a fine jewelry platform that champions independent designers, all of whom have their own really strong causes that they support through the platform. So Valerie, without further ado, I would like to hand over to you to tell us a little bit more about Ethos of London in your own words and the mission that underpins your business.
Hi, yes, good morning, Michelle. First of all, thank you for having me here. It's always a pleasure to be speaking with you. So Ethos of London, as you rightly said, is a fine jewelry online destination where I champion, or Ethos of London champion, a group of designers. There's about 12 designers at the moment that I work with. And it's all about promoting quality fine jewelry pieces, which are design-led, art-led, but also timeless, because of the quality of the jewelry means that it will last a lifetime and beyond. So that's really the principle. And then the other aspect of it is also, as you highlighted, also is the sort of ethical and positive social impact. So Ethos of London, we work with a charity called Women for Women International, and then each of the designers we work with also have their own sort of philanthropic activity as well. So there's a sort of ripple effect of positive social impact and sort of ethical business behavior. That obviously also extend to the sourcing of the material. I mean, sustainability is a big word at the moment. Which I prefer to use ethics and ethical practices rather than sustainability, but it comes back together where the designer we work with are obviously very mindful of how they source their materials. So the majority of it would be recycled gold or fair traded, and obviously ethically sourced gemstone as well.
Amazing. And you've had a long-standing career in the art world. It'd be really interesting to hear from you about your career path and what led you to move from art, and you've had a very colourful, well-established career in that space, to now running a jewelry platform. What's the connection?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So I've worked with art galleries in London for about a decade, and I studied at Christie's in London. I studied art history and curating artworks on galleries. So I've had a range of experience within the art market, some more cultural and some more commercial, which I think informs a lot of what I do now as well. Meaning, my focus is really about promoting soulful pieces. So I guess I'm very much geared towards the more cultural heritage and culturally interesting pieces rather than the mass market. I'll show you, I've got a piece here with me.
Oh, lovely.
All of everything that's showcased on Ethos of London, they're either one of a kind or limited edition. So I'll show you here. This is a piece by a designer called Linda Oj. So she designs and creates. So she makes everything from A to Z, from the conception to the making of the piece. All of the pieces are completely one of a kind, and they're also made in 24 karat gold. So just to give you a little bit of background, gold goes from 14 karat, 18 karat, 22 karat, 24 karat. And 24 karat is investment grade gold. So 24 karat is what you would buy at the Bank of England, the brick, if you want to buy gold as an investment. So this is basically one down from that. So it's very high quality. which means that it's not going to tarnish over time. You know, the color is going to stay bright and beautiful, and it's a very deep color, deep yellow. So I'll show it to you now. So I don't know if you can see this. So this is with diamonds, and they're sort of faceted diamond. They're not brilliant cut. And I don't know if you can see how the color, how kind of deep yellow that is.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, so it's totally one of a kind. So if you I think it probably fit just on my little finger. So the beauty of that, going back to the art world, is that, you know, any one of a kind pieces is by definition collectible. And also the designers I work with all have a very unique style, which kind of, you know, it kind of, they stand out from, you know, the from the crowd in that way. They have like a signature style with limited edition or one of a kind pieces, which makes the piece collectible, and with that, you know, it kind of adds value over time. So this is Linda Hodge, but there's another designer which I have online, Silvia Furmanovic. Silvia is actually from Brazil, and she also makes one of a kind pieces. And I have absolutely no doubt that her pieces, you know, will be popping up at, you know, during auction at Christie's or Sotheby's in their jewellery sales, you know, in the future. I mean, obviously, like with artists, you know, when the piece is contemporary and there are pieces that are still being made, you know, it doesn't really show up in auction, but that tends to happen, you know, a few years down the line, potentially when the maker isn't around anymore, sadly. But so yeah, so I think there's a huge overlap between art and jewelry. I mean, the auction houses is a really good illustration of that. You know, they have an art department, they also have a fine jewelry department, and those pieces are sold very much in a similar way that an artwork is. So for me, all the designers I work with, you know, they're artists in their own right. They certainly have the personality and the charisma to match that, all of them. And they also create very, you know, it's wearable art, really. I mean, definitely with Linda, you know, I do kind of coined it wearable art. They're little miniature pieces of sculpture, really. Yeah. So for me, you know, art and jewelry, you know, there's so many overlap with the type of jewelry that I showcase. So because it's not mainstream, it's not mass produced, it's a very sort of luxury, small edition, limited edition pieces. So there's many overlap. And I think what drove me personally to make the switch was, one, the fascination for gemstone. Always had this fascination with the gemstone, the energies. I mean, whether or not you believe or not in that, that's very personal, but many people choose to feel some sort of energy, or you know, whether that's protection or joy or meaning with the gemstone that they wear. So that's something that's always fascinating me, and so it's sort of bringing my personal passion into my professional life, and also, you know, moving from we've talked a little bit about this before, but moving, you know, the gallery setting that I used to work with was very corporate, you know, and I sort of moved away from that corporate setting to create my own business with my own value and my own goals, really. So that was kind of part of it.
Well, I would really encourage everyone that's joined us today to go on to Ethos in London and have a look at Valerie's curation, because it's testament to your eye for amazing pieces, but also your curation. And you know, it's a wonderful journey to go on to Ethos of London and have a look at all of the pieces there, because I think it's quite an eclectic collection, but also a wonderful thing that you are doing for smaller businesses, because, you know, you're a small business yourself, but in turn you are supporting individuals all over the world that otherwise might not necessarily have had this exposure and access to clients to be able to tell their stories in the way that your platform allows them to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of the designers are, very established, and they have, they will be sold in some of the, very sort of high-end department stores, etc. So, a good number of them have a thriving business, and they're quite renowned in the industry already. Some of them are more artisan, and they're a little bit more, I would say, maybe slightly smaller businesses. A few are starting up, so they've been maybe they started 2-3 years ago. Nadine and Zoe, for example, has a family heritage in jewellery. So her family was working and trading in jewellery for generation, but she actually herself started her brand, I think 2017. So quite recently.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So I think definitely there's an element which is about bringing those designers together to create, strength. There's strength and power in having a group of designers together. So that definitely is meant to benefit them, as well as Ethos of London. So. Yeah, there's power in what's the word? There's power in union or something like this.
Well, we're all stronger together.
Stronger together. So yeah. I think obviously I'm bringing designers, as you correctly said, who are very different, very individual, different style, different design in different countries. Some are from the US. Got a designer from Germany, a few from London, and then one from Mumbai as well. So it's very international. And it's really about their ethics. So what they believe in when they create, it has to be about quality, design, innovation in design. So all the pieces are very contemporary. They mix the sort of traditional with the contemporary, and that's where the storytelling comes in, the cultural heritage comes in. So, for example, Esther, who is from Mumbai, Indian jewelry traditionally was very much created around weddings. So they have quite traditional wedding jewelry pieces. And so they actually take that Indian heritage and create something new and modern and a little bit different from the traditional part. Same with Nadine, she uses very traditional, there's something about her pieces that are very timeless, but it's also very modern, contemporary with the color she uses, the fact that a lot of her pieces are detachable, so they, you can sort of wear it in one or two ways. So I think design innovation is definitely part of the everything that the brands I work with do. So yeah, it's and hopefully I don't want to have too many designers, but I'm always really excited at discovering new people and new talents. So more to come for sure.
Amazing. That's really exciting. And I have no doubt that you will soon be very sought after by all of those jewelers that are coming on, that they will want to showcase on your platform because of the mission and how you want to showcase them and connect them with the rest of the world, as well as with other designers, in terms of talking about this bringing together of creative minds and showcasing art like you would in a gallery. And I think what really makes your platform special is that there's as you mentioned it yourself, the storytelling element, that with each designer that you showcase, there's really an opportunity to get, to understand their story and their journey, which is not something that you get when you're browsing in a department store or, kind of a physical multi-brand space. I think that's often something that we miss out on. So as I said to everyone, please go on and have a look, because it is it's a creative journey in itself just to be able to go through and have a look at all of the pieces. It's very inspiring.
Yeah, it's like a wondrous path actually to go online. And so example, I had a conversation with Linda, so this is good because I have it. So because we talked about storytelling, and so obviously the storytelling starts with the piece and who created it, etc. But obviously the story then carries on with who buys it and how you wear it and when you wear it and what you're buying it for. And then, so, the story of the jewel carries on over time, right? And so this is why having, quality pieces is important, because if you buy something in vermeil, so vermeil means that it's basically usually silver and sometimes bronze, and it's a very thin layers of plated gold on the top. So usually that doesn't last, which means that you can't, if it doesn't last, you can't build memory into that piece. Mm-hmm. A ring like this, will be here in a few hundred years time, and with the 22 karat gold, so it will keep the color, but obviously with time, you might, it might get a little kind of marks here and there, or not marks per se, but you know what I mean, a bit of use, and it becomes part of the story of the jewelry. It has that kind of a little bit like a sort of it has that sort of inner life, right? It's on the skin, and it sort of evolve with the person who wears it, and it's nice to feel that an object can have that kind of sense of passage of time that's imbued within it. So that's really the.
You talked earlier about the spiritual meaning or the meanings that we attach to the pieces of jewelry that we choose or that we invest in, and in the sense of a talisman. I mean, is that something that the designers you showcase? Is that something that they that is borne in mind in terms of how they create their pieces, or do you think that's more of a personal something that we would assign to a piece of jewelry that we buy?
So that's a very interesting question. I actually find that the majority of designers do not really look at the gemstone this way. I think it's a little bit like being a doctor. It's like when you're not a doctor, everything feels like overwhelming. A doctor will be very practical, very factual, and I think obviously the jeweler, they work with the gemstone in a very practical way. They have to, they don't facet the gemstone themselves. A lot of the time they will work with cutters, etc. But they have to work with the gemstone. They have to set it. They have to get the metal to being molded around it. They have to look at it in terms of color and size in a creative design manner. So I think most of the jeweler, we look at the gemstone as in a practical design way, how it can fit into the pieces that they're creating. Mm-hmm. However, there is, jewelry as talisman is something that's existed for, centuries, literally. People used to travel with certain pieces of jewelry on them as protection. It always existed. So I think it's not, the designer themselves, the jeweler themselves might not look at it that way particularly. But at the same time, there's an understanding that jewelry as an object, has that power in people's life, and that's a beautiful thing, right? I mean, why wouldn't you want to have some joy and meaning and storytelling, right? So, I mean, Linda, for example, she creates, it's not so much with the gemstones with her, but it's the actual design. So she has a few collections, and one of them, one of the collections she creates is with sword. So actual sword. So, and, she designs the sword, and they will be encrusted with different gemstone, diamond or rubies, etc. And the idea of the sword is a symbol of power. And I think the story with her is that her daughter one day came back home with a tattoo of a sword. And as a parent, she tells the story that she was horrified that her daughter got a tattoo. But then when her daughter explained why, she thought it was a really beautiful story that, that she got this tattoo as a form of a show of strength and protection, and that, no matter what happens in her life, she will overcome it, and she will be strong enough to deal with it. And that's what that tattoo meant to her. So she actually led to her creating a collection of sword pieces. So in that sense, it's not so much the gemstones on it, but the piece itself is definitely a symbol. It's a symbol, you know.
Yeah.
So jewelry has that, you know, has that power and that storytelling. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, traditionally, in terms of the significance of gemstone, you know, diamond is strength because, you know, it's pretty much indestructible. So it's strength, power. Amethyst is usually protection. So it goes with the colors. So citrine, which is yellow, this is the color of the sun. So a lot it sort of signify abundance and wealth and abundance basically. And then most of those gemstones that tend to be pink in nature tend to symbolize love and kind of energy from the heart. So you can, if you look at the color of the gemstone, it sort of often gives you an indication as to what the traditional interpretation of the gemstone is. And then it's for each of everyone to explore that.
Yeah, and I suppose to combine that with birthstones, and because from a gifting perspective, you know, it's I think a lot of the time when you gift a piece of jewelry to someone, it has some meaning for you that you then want to convey to the recipient and the person that you're buying the piece for.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about your business journey. So kind of going back to you setting up Ethos of London, because I think we've probably got many people joining us today who are on a business growth trajectory. What's been the greatest challenge that you faced in establishing and building Ethos of London?
So, you know, challenges are twofold. There's practical challenges, whatever that is, and there are many. And then there's the sort of the mindset challenge. I mean, you know, being an online business, the first things I had to overcome was obviously the website, you know, creating it, putting it together. I mean, it's, you know, I would say business is an ongoing set of challenges that you have to you have to solve, you know, challenges or question or however you want to put it. And I think that's you know, that's interesting, and that's what makes it stimulating and exciting as well. I mean, you know, as a startup, I would probably say that the main challenge can be funding and budgets. But again, if you look at it, you know, it's actually it's a practical issue which can be overcome with practical means. So I mean, there's plenty of resources for startup to reach out for funding and apply for grants. So there's lots of tools available, but I think the challenge is, you know, having the right mindset in order to benefit from the tools. So it's really about being focused, having a lot of clarity about what you want to achieve, and staying, you know, staying focused on your goal. And that, you know, that's not always easy, you know, and I think also, I mean, for me personally, it's taking me a little bit of time to sort of navigate which path I'm going to take, and I'm sort of comfortable taking a little bit of that time to kind of find what fits for you, right? I mean, if you look at for example, the investment path, you know, it's you know, each decision you take during that business journey will affect the future, will affect, you know, whether or not you stay as you know, you're the decision maker. You know, I was speaking to somebody yesterday who is doing incredibly well quite quickly and had some offer to kind of buy or take over or have share of his company. And I think he was sort of explaining to me that one of the options would actually, it was great and very, very fruitful, but it would make him an employee. And he kind of like, well, do I want to go that way? Do I want to, you know, the money would be great, but do I want to become somebody else's employee because I started this business wanting to have my own business? So, you know, I think really the challenge is, for me anyway, at the moment, is sort of finding your path and what feels right. Obviously, you have to grow, you have to keep going, and you have to you know, evolve. So it's finding those steps and what works for you.
Yeah, no, I think definitely you touched on something really, really relevant in terms of the funding piece, is that a lot of people go into setting up businesses and growing businesses thinking that they need to go out and get funding without thinking about their business path and ultimately where they want to take it, because we underestimate often that the kind of funding you take on dictates ultimately what will happen with your business. So Absolutely. In the case of the person you were talking to, that ultimately he might land up no longer being a part of his business ultimately, so it all depends on the level of control and the decision making, and ultimately where you see yourself. Will it be a legacy business that you want to pass on to your family, in which case then institutional investment is not right for you. So I think there's a big learning piece around that. But one of my takeaways just from what you were talking about mindset is, I think the message there for me was nothing is impossible. Building a business comes with its challenges, but if you have the right mindset and you stay positive, you can access resources to help you troubleshoot along the way.
Absolutely.
And the same with, and I think failure is part of that so many successful business owners, their key message is always that failure is a very big part of success in helping you figure out what it is that you want to do and which way you want to go. And you have to reframe those in a positive way, that they're learning experiences rather than failures or obstacles that we can't get around.
No, absolutely. There's always learning. And I think another element that's important is time, actually, time scale. Because obviously, I'm saying I'm taking a bit of time to make decisions, but obviously it kind of has an expiry date, right? You don't want to be sitting on an idea for the next 2 years, right? It's okay to it's okay to allow for different options, but then, if you've kind of looked at something for, 3 to 6 months, then I would probably say that at the end of that period, you probably need to make a decision either way. So I think allowing for different things to come in is important. So not be, sudden and kind of reactive, but at the same time, you also need to keep a certain pace for things to move forward. So it's kind of finding the right balance between the two. Really, I think for me, when I started and going back to mindset, it's really being surrounded, people's energy is just so important. Being really surrounded with people who give you that kind of positive energy, that kind of get up and go, and not just people you work with, but not just like the partners that you work with as well are really important. So for example, the designer I have on board, if they feel passionate about my platform, then that makes me want to work 10 times harder with them, right? Because I get that feedback and that energy. So it's really important for me to have that passion and that kind of mutual kind of encouragement and interest. It sounds obvious, but it's about sort of I guess valuing that when you find it as well. So definitely being surrounded with the right people in your personal life and then professional life is also quite key, because it influences your decision. Like for example, your personal environment whether or not we want it or not, I think it does influence our decision.
Sure. Yeah.
And it influences our mindset and how we frame problems and solutions. So it's really key to have a sort of support network around you.
No, absolutely. And I think having a group of people around you that you trust, that you can use as a sounding board, because so often I think as business owners we think we need to go out and secure services from somebody, but a lot of the time there is work we can do within our own circles to test our ideas, to ask people questions, and to ask for help. And then beyond that is to kind of look at how we can get in people that know how to do things that we don't, and build our skill set that way. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have a piece of advice that you would offer to a woman who is considering making a career change to start her own business, or maybe someone who is unhappy in their current role? Do you kind of have a golden nugget of advice for them?
Start. Just, if you want change, just you have to initiate the change. Just start. And it doesn't need to be, I don't mean quit your job or do something rash or whatever, but just start, like act on it. So if you're dissatisfied, or if you simply have an idea that you know is in the back of your mind and you think it would be great, just start. So whatever that means, it might mean reaching out to somebody to talk about it, it might mean writing a business plan down, it might mean going to talk to, you know, doing some networking and going to talk to a number of people in industry, to have some sounding board, as we've just said. So I think taking the first step is you know, is basically key, and because we never know how far that's going to go. And I think, you know, you have to take that step number one for step number 2, 3, 4, 5 to then follow, right? So and you know, for me it was really you know, curiosities. If you're not sure what you want to do, then it starts with curiosity. So curiosity about different industry around you, about people, know that the world is opening up again. You know, we can definitely socialize again. So going to events, showing interest, and just basically allowing for things to come to you by being open, available, and curious about, you know, about the world around you. You know, usually you know, bring new things in, but yeah, otherwise just and if you know, if you have an idea, just take the number one, you know, number one, is it a step? Yeah, foot first, something like that.
Yeah. And I think, you know, it's that's a really important piece of advice, because I think a lot of the time when you want to make a change, or you're in a position where you have an idea, or you are in a professional role where possibly you want to innovate, or you want to try something new, or you want to move into a different role, you know, it is just really about taking baby steps. And, you know, what is the saying? Eat your elephant in small chunks.
Yes.
You know, just break it down. And
I like that. I never heard that before. I like that.
Each elephant small chunks. Because often when we look at, you know, things can seem insurmountable if you look at them in their entirities, but actually if you break them up into working parts or into smaller elements, they're far more they're far easier to navigate, and then you can actually make considerable progress rather than trying to face
yeah, absolutely. And then different challenges come up as you go along, right? But then you can't anticipate that. You have to start. You know, you can't anticipate what you know, what your needs are going to be, you know, 6 months down the line, because, you know, you have to go it's a journey. You have to go through the journey. So it's, you know, yeah.
And be adaptable, because as you quite rightly said, you know, we have no idea which way these paths will take us. And yes, there will be successes along the way, but there will also be challenges that we have to face where we possibly, you know, we might not feel we're equipped to deal with them. And it's about keeping an open mind and rolling with the punches, so to say, and being adaptable. That all of these things that we come up across just kind of enhance and enrich our journey, and build on our skill sets.
Yeah, and then an advice that was given to me is also focus on your why. So rather than thinking about what you need to do or what you have to do, think about why you're doing it. And I don't mean to earn an income, or to, you know, we all need all these things are obvious. I think, you know, if you have like a bigger, wider, bigger goal, you know, something personal to you, you know, and I think, if you always go back to this why, you know, that it will kind of give you the motivation to, you know, to keep going further. So, you know, and I think it is a good advice, because sometimes we can get sort of caught up with details. And if you have a bigger picture in mind and have a why you're doing this. So for me, when I started it, the why was very much well, I wanted to make a difference in women's life, and supporting other women was definitely part of my why. I wasn't sure how or exactly, you know, how to do it. I mean, the philanthropic part of Ethos of London is aiming to do that. So the donation to Women for Women International, which is a charity that support women who have experienced war, and war, survivors of war. So that was my step number one, to do something towards that goal. But as my journey evolved, that can also, I would expect it to evolve over time as well. But part of my why was definitely supporting other women in the world, in business and in the world. And especially with jewelry, which is by definition a very feminine, it's a feminine object. It's what I sell anyway. There's jewelry for men as well, but what I focus on is jewelry for women. So it's feminine, it's worn by women, for women. In fact, all of the designers I work with are also women. So it was very important for me to create this circle of giving, where you have, I think there's a phrase, beauty that keeps on giving. So there's the beauty of the design on the ring and the jewelry. There's the joy of the woman, the person, and the woman who wears it. And then, that has a ripple effect to other women in the world, with whether or not that's charitable donation, or maybe some other ways. Maybe, I'm not sure yet, maybe we'll end up doing some maybe grants for women-led businesses or something like this. So that was part of my why. And, so I think, we can talk about, we can talk about the website, the funding, the whatever, and all those are they're all challenges and steps. But if you know what what's your kind of driving force, and if you remember that, I think it's really helpful to focus on things on the long run. No, it's not the only reason why I set up the business. I also set it up to, as a challenge for me, and because I'm super passionate about the jewelry, and I want to champion creativity and design. Championing creativity, design, beautiful, collectible objects that last the test of time. All of those things are really important to me. And then the second aspect is the sort of supporting women in the world. So those two things sort of come together. So it's a very personal project for me. It brings all the things that I want to put out in the world and that I think matters. So remembering that along the way will keep you going.
Well, I mean, I'm a very firm believer in the value of purpose, and how I believe, and I hope to inspire young women to know this and to live this, that when your passion and your purpose align, great things happen, and you can create a successful business out of anything that has those two elements. If you are passionate and you have, as you were talking about, the mindset, and you're just tenacious in the pursuit of what it is that sets your heart on fire, and that aligns with your purpose, you're set for success, because the path may not always take you the way you think it will, but those are two real fundamentals. And I think if you look back on any successful women-led business, and some of the ones that we know, those are their key ingredients. That the founder had those elements.
Yeah, it's purpose and passion, and focus. Yeah, and expertise as well. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people forget about the why, or they deviate from it, and then that's when things go wrong. So it's a good reminder to all of us to keep coming back to that, keep making sure that we're aligning with what what underpinned this or started this journey in the first place, and why it's important to us, because we spend so many hours plugging away at work, and doing things to promote our livelihoods and to keep going, but we have to love what we do, because we spend so much time loving it, doing it, that if you don't love it, what is the point? Yeah,
no, for sure. And then, there's a big financial aspect as well, especially with business, so it's important not to forget that. And I think, we all want to succeed financially or and deserve to, right? So it's also understanding what that means, and what the financial vision is. So it's marrying that, financial vision, ambition, purpose, and passion.
Yeah. And I think with all of those things, you can attract abundance to you, because if you spoke earlier about putting good energy out there and being open to receiving things.
Yes.
And I think you have those key ingredients, and you're really fostering your passion and your purpose. You are, just by default, opening yourself up to really positive things to come toward you, and yes, and asserting your worth. I think that's really important, making sure that we don't fall into that trap of doing things for the sake of doing them and forgetting that actually we do still need to make money, and we have bills to pay, and we need to, because we're not doing anyone any favors if we run businesses that don't have that ripple effect, and spread that abundance further than ourselves. So
yeah, and not apologizing around money and finance. I think I think many women, my goal is not to open a store. My goal is definitely to be online and to be an online destination for fine jewelry, which is a little bit unusual, because, most people will say, oh, it's nice to see it. And yes, it's nice to see it. But I think there's definitely ways to engage also online. And tech is a big part of that in terms of the future of e-commerce. We're sort of touching upon it now, but for me, what I'm really interested in is things like 3D virtual rendering, where you could project a ring like this on your finger through your phone, or have this is already available. You can have 3D immersive environments. You could be online and sort of walk through a virtual store, and you can turn around and see the pieces. And, this is only going to get better and better and better. So, hopefully soon, you can, and the technology is already there. I think they're doing it. You can do it with bracelet. I think there's a few things they haven't actually kind of quite, finalized, but so it's used for trainers a lot at the moment. There's a few brands for trainers where you can use your phone and project it on your foot. So all of that is coming fast, hopefully.
I think in many ways the last 18 months has kind of paved the way for a lot of that, because it's changed our perception of how we shop and how we consume. We were all essentially confined to our homes, and the only way that we could shop was online. And so, and I've seen it within the women's chapter community, people buying jewelry pieces online, people buying fragrance online, all of these product categories that ordinarily you would feel the need to go in and smell it, touch it, feel it. That we've broken through that barrier in many ways. We're seeing brands that are really thriving online that ordinarily people would have shied away from making an online purchase, because either it was a legacy purchase or something that was very high value, or because they wanted to be able to smell it. And I think there's, on both sides, there's innovation coming from brands coming up with ways for people to experience their products, along the purchase journey, but also breaking down these barriers around where we traditionally thought there were certain things that we just would never buy online. And the same, even things like you were talking about trainers and shoes, that if you bought a pair of high heels, typically several years ago, you wouldn't consider buying a pair of high heels online, because you would want to go into the shop and you would actually want to try them on, particularly if you're someone that struggles with fit or being between sizes or whatever. And yet that's something it's become quite normal.
Yeah, and I think it's, it's about trust and quality of service. If you buy something online, you have customer service, you can have conversation, you can talk about the product before, after you bought it. It's not like you just buy the piece and then you're suddenly on your own and that's it. There's a whole journey and conversation around the purchase before, during, and after that also takes place. So I think people hopefully feel comfortable with that. And for example, with jewelry, perhaps if you're already familiar with the brand, if you've seen it, already bought a piece, also that helps to maybe make further purchases, because you have an understanding of the quality, of the type of design, you've seen it before. So, not every online purchase is just made, completely without having prior information or experience of the thing you're purchasing. So and you know, it really is about for me, I guess the challenge as a retailer is you know, telling those story in an effective. The stories are there and they're beautiful and they're so rich. But, you know, my challenge is being able to communicate that to people through, you know, the sort of digital medium. So, you know, that's the challenge, because, you know, it's much easier to tell a story like we're doing now. You know, I could go on for hours just talking about each designer and their stories. But so, you know, it's being able to do that in a way that's manageable, you know, because people don't, you know, they're not going to spend an hour and a half listening to me talking to, you know, so it's being able, it's really what it is. It's telling the stories in an engaging, effective way through the digital world that we live in, really. And that kind of just is the challenge for most brands, actually, with or without a shop, you know.
Yeah. Engagement, reach, and, you know, as you said, keeping people's attention for long enough so that you can convey the true essence of the story and what makes the products and experiences so special.
Yeah, and sometimes, you know, it's finding the right way to do that. You know, sometime maybe you don't need to be speaking for an hour. Maybe just one word can say what I'm trying to say in, you know, in an hour. So, and it's a repetition of those messages and how you kind of communicate it and deliver it. But, you know, for me, the good part is that it's not, you know, it's not, I think the important part, like I'm talking about me or any brand, you know, it's not about creating this. It's not about creating stories that aren't there in order to be able to talk about what your product, because that's never going to work. It's about having a really rich, interesting, you know, products or jewelry or something else, or perfume with you, having something that has a lot of depth and interest and storytelling within it. And then the challenge is to do that effectively. But you can't, you know, you don't want to be doing it the other way around. You don't want to have something boring and then think, oh, you know, what can I say about that, you know, just to draw attention to it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so in a way I've got a good problem, because my problem is there's too much to say. So yeah, well, and content is king, as we know. So that's, you know, it's a really good way of putting it, that's a good problem to have. Having all of these amazing stories and just finding the right ways to share them and disseminate. Sorts of questions prepared, but I think we've actually covered answers to all of them. So it's been really wonderful talking to you about jewelry, its meaning, it as an investment piece. So I think, you know, particularly for me, the 24 karat gold element was really interesting, and I think it's food for thought for all of us as consumers to think about how we're spending our money in a meaningful way on beautiful pieces that are designed to last a lifetime, and that those stories then can live on through those pieces and the people that wear them. So I think it was really special, and to talk business with you, it was wonderful. It's been great to have an insight into your journey and to hear all of the advice and wisdom that you have to share. So thank you very much. Thank you, Michelle.
To everyone that's joined us, please go and have a look at Ethos of London. It's an incredible journey from a creative perspective, but also there are wonderful stories to discover, pieces to buy. So have a look at them and think about how you could be treating yourself or investing in something for yourself going forward. Valerie, thank you for making time to join us today. It was really lovely talking to you.
Thank you, Michelle. Likewise.
Brilliant. Take care. Cheers, everyone. Bye.